Welcome to the Mentor Podcast, where the most highly motivated entrepreneurs come to get their weekly dose of financial stability with host Ron LeGrand, as well as other nationally recognized thought leaders who will teach you how to get, grow, and protect your wealth.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Mentor Podcast.com. And I have a very special guest with me today that I've known for probably pushing 35 years or more. I know I'm in my 42nd year, but I don't remember what year I met Bruce Norris. And he gave me a bio to read, but if I read his bio, it would take up the entire 30 minutes we have for this podcast. So I'm going to let him hit his own highlights. I don't know anybody that knows more about Bruce than Bruce. So how are you doing, sir?
Good, Ron. Nice to see you. It's so long. I was going to say it's so long.
One smart move, Bruce, and as you moved from California to Florida. So that ought to tell you guys something right there.
Yeah, I actually can collect rent without a sheriff, and the sheriff would probably be on the side of the renter. So yeah. California's turned a little crazy, that's for sure.
All right.
Do you remember how we met? It's interesting.
I don't.
You and I were writing for a magazine, Creative Real Estate Magazine, and you read the articles I was writing, and you finally kind of just called me up. He said, "Sounds like you're living the same life on the other coast," because that's all I did was flip properties. And
okay.
And you introduced yourself, and we kind of connected then. And then I went to a seminar. It's interesting that you sent me a thank you note, because you helped me connect dots that I had never thought of before. So I was a house buyer and a good one. I bought it. Like my price was 50 cents on the dollar, I would pass. If I was at an auction and it went to 51%, I would pass. And so,
remember those days.
Yeah, that's right. There were those days. But anyway, when I heard what you said, I connected the lending dot, and then I connected the boot camp dot. And those were very profitable journeys. So that was very cool. And I thank you.
All right. Well, Bruce, I know you as the guy who does a lot of work to try to figure out where we as an economy is going next and where real estate is going. And that's what I think you are noted for. And I tell you, everybody that I've talked to in California about you has a high opinion of your opinions. So I'm going to let you tell us, are we looking into the future today based on what you're learning along the way?
Sure. I'll give you just a little background how I even got interested in it. I had been in the business for about 15 years flipping property. So I started in 80, so it was about 95. And first 10 years, nothing happened that was bad, and pricing just went up. And then in 1990, I built 7 custom homes, and the price went down 150 grand. And I had 7 of them, which was not nice. So I had to stand in front of that, 20 grand a month of payments, and I solved it. But it was sort of like a little note to self, oh, real estate can hurt. And then about 5 years later, 1995, my son Aaron graduates from high school. I buy him a Honda Civic for $15,700 and buy a house in California for $13,300. And it just stunned me. I thought, okay, well, what the heck happened? How did real estate, 3-bedroom houses in my town of Riverside, get cheaper than cars? And I thought, I got to figure this out. And so I went to the library and I read 25 years of articles in microfilm. Yeah. Every article written in any national magazine, any newspaper that projected real estate prices, I read it. And what I was looking for, I wasn't looking to figure it out. I was looking for the guy that had figured it out. But no one had ever written in advance something that was going to happen and it was accurate. So I thought, I'm not sure if it's possible, but I'm going to give it a shot. And so for the next 18 months, all I did was go into libraries and handwrite data. I didn't even know what categories mattered, but if I had affordability, I wrote down every year that was there, month supply, on and on, sales. I made all these charts. 18 months later, I went to Maui. I had no skill in going to a computer and laying charts over each other. So I literally had to lay them on the ground with yardsticks. And in California, we had 2 boom and bust cycles. And so I took the yardsticks and it allowed me to play with the charts. And what I was looking for was a domino chart. What started a boom, what started a bust, and was the sequence repetitive? It had to be repetitive or it didn't count. And I thought that I figured it out. So in 97 in January, we wrote, this was for specific for California, why prices will double in the next 8 years. And prices doubled in 8 years. And then, of course, they kept going up. When they went up way too far past the barriers that I thought were logical, I had a seminar. We had a few hundred people in the audience, and I decided I would interview a lender. So this had to be 2005. And I thought I was going to interview them for 20 minutes. I interviewed them for one question. First question I asked was, the stated income number, where does it come from? Now, you're in front of hundreds of people, and without batting an eye, she said, oh, we just make it up. And I had to absorb that for a few seconds, because I'm translating that to say, we commit fraud on every loan and we don't even care. And I just went, holy cow, now I know where we're at. So we wrote a report called the California Crash, predicting prices would go down by half. We wrote that in 06, and by 09, that had all been accomplished. And I think what's unusual is that, you and I invest our own money. Yeah. I'm not a realtor wanting listings. I'm an investor wanting to protect my money. And so that's the spirit in which all of this stuff has ever been written, is saying, okay, can I tell you what's next and move my money out of harm's way? So that's been an interesting journey. Just kind of a funny sidebar. So in 09, all this happened. Yeah. I get invited to New York to speak to the top 10 hedge funds for a 3-hour dinner. So Paul Volcker was the one that did the meeting the first quarter in 09 with these guys, and Bruce Norris is the second quarter. I think that's pretty hilarious, because I have a high school diploma. and after the 3-hour meeting, they offered me several $1 billion to invest it. And that's not what I wanted to do. I didn't want Wall Street to take over what I thought the investor could do. And so I was pretty staunch on that. And I just thought they were arrogant, and I didn't enjoy that either. So I just stuck with what I did. So at any rate, that's what we got known for, is calling the cycles. So in 2017, we wrote a report called as 2% mortgage rates, 40 trillion in debt. It was a look out into the future that I thought we would hit a mortgage rate that started with a 2 in a certain time frame. That did happen. We're on our way to the trillions, of $40 trillion of debt. So that brings you up to speed. So we just had a seminar. We just had a very unusual circumstance. We had, at the end of 2019, the charts that I pay attention to were kind of saying, okay, things are slowing up. There's a certain percentage of houses that are actually losing value already. And then all of a sudden, COVID happened. And COVID was like adrenaline shot in the arm, and it had an interesting effect. Naturally, you had a whole bunch of listings disappear. So in California, say 55% of the listings said, forget it, you can't turn my house. On the demand side, it went off the charts, with people going, I've got to get the heck out of here, or I've got to own a house for the first time. So the demand exploded and landed on no inventory. And prices went from 600 to 900 grand in 24 months. Yeah. So here we are now going, okay, what's next? So the title of this report is looking at all the stats I normally look at. And the title is, we're either in for a lost decade or a 1% mortgage rate. And so that's the gist of the report. Ron, we have something we've never had before in place, and that's going to make, and it is making a difference right now. I don't know, like, what your group. I'll mention this: the one thing you can't do is land on the square you most hope will happen. That is not how charts work. If you're a legitimate researcher, you don't draw the conclusion until you're done. I don't ever do that. I can't say, gosh, I've got 25 houses for sale, so I'm going to land on the square that everything's going to be fine. You can't do that. So, but what's very interesting is the math is certainly there for a big price hit for real estate. We went up like crazy, and mortgage rates went from, say, 2.5 to now 7. So you do the math of that payment, you should have a whole lot less median price matched with that. The one thing we've never had before, Ron, is we have a huge majority of the people that had borrowed money have a mortgage rate of 2 or 3% who are not going anywhere. So when you look at a chart and say, okay, well, what's the activity percentage for new houses versus existing homes? Typically, new homes range from 13% in a year like 2009 when REOs are cheaper than new houses cost. So they got down to 13% to a high of 22. So usually 87% to 78% are existing homes. That's the real estate market. The problem is the 87% aren't showing up.
Yeah, I follow you.
Yeah, you got a 2.5% mortgage rate. You're not going to sell yours unless you have to do it. And even if you have to do it, there's a good chance you'd have a positive cash flow rental. And so if you got transferred, you might just keep the thing.
I got you.
Yeah.
You got to put the human factor in there, no matter what.
No. What you just said is more important than anything. We've created something called a moodometer, and it's exactly what you just said. Because as an investor, you know exactly what happens. At the peak of the market, everyone wants one. If you have something for sale, it's a happy thing. In 2021, I'm sure you had stuff for sale and the prices went crazier than you ever thought. And you had, 20 offers in 20 minutes. Well, that's when you're happy you're a seller. When you're happy you're a buyer is when everyone's running for cover, and it's 2009 in California, and houses that were 365 or 65 grand, and there's no takers because it's emotionally impossible to want one. That's why I like charts. I can look at charts. So we literally have created a moodometer that calculates the mood of the participant. And I can play with it. So I can go forward and say, okay, right now, if you look at the median price and match it with income, we're at very close to an all-time high in what we're having to pay for a house. Say 65%.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. Okay. The only reason that's stable is that you have nothing for sale.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. So then you have to go, okay, well, how did prices go down before? Well, we had a glut of REOs. Is that likely to happen this time?
Well, I don't know. I agree with you that people with the low rates are going to tend to hang on, but I also know that whether they intend to hang on or not, there's a lot of problems that come into their lives that it's going to make them sell. I do know that those loans are a premium right now, and when I look at a low interest rate loan, the rest of the parameters of buying kind of take second fiddle. Just the fact that I got that loan at that rate turns it into a deal.
Well, see, I think the owner of that house looks at that exactly the same way, not as professionally as you, but they're looking at that going, wow, if I sell this house and have to get a 7% mortgage, the quality of the location that I can live in has just changed. Well,
that is true theoretically, but then there's the human factor. I'm getting a divorce. I'm sick. I've got to move. Or I'm died. I'm dead. All of those things play. So the houses are still moving. But for those who have the ability to hang on to their property, I agree that rate's going to be very attractive. A good reason for them not to sell it.
Just for fun, let's go over some of the past numbers. It's because when you put together charts, again, you have to get out of the way of what you want to happen, and you have to listen to the history of the chart. So let's go to 1980. So what's interesting is the dominoes that happen after you reach a low in affordability, which is basically saying the home is as expensive as it can get for your budget. So it's kind of the same story. What happens is as affordability goes up, the charts that matter, inventory for sale, construction, unemployment, all those turn negative. So, so then you have to figure out what matters. So in 1980, we have 22 months of houses for sale, 30 months of condos, interest rates at 15, unemployment at 10. How much price damage did we have between 80 and 84? None.
No.
Not $1. And you had all this inventory. So I'll fast forward to 2009. Unemployment's 10, but your inventory level's 8 months. There's no comparison to the interest rate. It's probably 8 instead of 15. And you have a price hit of 50%. So what you have to do is, okay, wow, how could you have this set of charts in 1980 cause no damage and the charts in 2009 create the worst downturn ever? The difference is, what was the inventory made of? In 1980, you had foreclosures go up a lot, but they never represented more than 1 in 4 properties that were for sale. It wasn't the dominant comp. In 2009, it was 70% of the inventory. It was dictating the value of every other property. And that's why you had to crash, because if you're an appraiser, you could not ignore that evidence. That year there's a guy named Magzi Arias, who is the president of the Appraisal Institute. And we had him at the Nixon Library event. We have a charity event every year. I purposely had him there so he could tell us what to do. I said, I'm buying houses that were $365 24 months ago. I'm buying them at $65,000. I put 20 grand in. I have them up for sale for 125. I have 20 offers the first day to buy them. Appraisal comes in at 90. And he's like, yeah, it's sick. He said, I know. He said, to be honest with you, all of your offers are really comps. Those are the comps of the market. I said, yeah, but here's what happens in the real world. If an appraiser comes in at 125 and a review appraiser comes in at 100, that guy never gets in another assignment for an appraiser and he knows it. And so you've really created a nightmare. And so anyway, I guess why I said that is to say the most damaging thing you can have is a category of have to sell inventory. They get so big it dominates the comps.
Yeah.
And I don't see that happening.
I often teach that same thing to the small investors, that the worst thing you want is a vacant house sitting up there sucking up money. So we refer back to ways to make sure that doesn't happen and take the risk out of it. And I always tell people that the biggest mistake you can make is go down and guarantee debt. Because if you don't guarantee debt, it don't make any difference what happens in the future. As long as you're not guaranteeing debt and you're not putting yourself into those short-term traps where you have to sell.
Right.
That's like your friend you just mentioned. As soon as you said that, I said to myself, well, why didn't you just lease option to tenant buyers then? Why not? Why sell them at all? I bet looking back, think about how many flippers looking back, they have to have the thought, what if I just kept about half of those houses,
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Especially the last 2 years. And you mentioned your prices increase in California. I'm just thinking through my head about houses I've got here, and I think all of them went up at least 50%.
Yeah, that's right.
Just like that.
Okay, but think about, was that going forward? So we kind of landed on the same square. The human participant is very important. So prices went up 50% because that participant was exuberant about ownership. Like, I have to have one. That mood is gone.
Yeah.
So that price should really fall by 30 to 40% to get back to what historically is the right mood, if you will. But there's not enough stuff for sale.
Right. For now. That's right.
Right. So here's what's interesting. When you look at unemployment numbers, the industry in California in 2021, talking about brokers, made $18 billion. In 2023, they will make $9 billion. So they're still fully employed, but 50% unemployed at the same time.
I see that in everything I read. All right, well, I got to get to the big question here. Where are we headed? What's next?
Well, I think it really comes down to, do you have an urgent group of inventory that starts dominating what's for sale? And I doubt it. I don't think REOs are going to get out of control. I think maybe the lenders also would think that hurt last time, so let's don't do that. The equity position for people, Ron, is still enormous. Yeah. And a lot of the people, they refied 3 times. They didn't just stop at 4. They said, 3.5, 2 for 2 3/4. I think they're going to stay as long as they can stay. So you have to have urgent inventory. I don't see the source. Maybe massive unemployment. Okay. But then you still have the guy that says, wow, the most valuable thing I have in my life is this 30-year mortgage below inflation, a free house, basically. So I think what's going to end up happening, you have a long-term stretch, a decade, where your income gradually tries to catch up with a payment that's now matched with the median price of the house. I don't think you have an upside at all for a decade.
I think you're probably right. In fact, if you look back to 2009, same thing's happened there. It took a long time for the values to start coming back up. But I still can't lose sight of the human factor. I don't care what the math is. People are people. They're always going to want to get out in certain circumstances. And, maybe the people that are not in any kind of trouble or have any kind of big issues are the ones that would be thinking, I better hold on. But, you've been around a long time. Frankly, I don't know what humans are thinking sometimes, and I quit trying to guess why they do the stuff they do. But, I'm in the market as well. I'm actively buying houses right now, and we don't have any trouble finding people. We have trouble when we deal with the people that have a nice house in a nice neighborhood and they don't have any issues. We're not buying their house, but that's not who we're targeting. We're targeting people that already have the issues and we know are going to sell their house. In fact, many of them have responded to us that they need to sell. So I've been through about 6 cycles, and I know you've been through at least 6 cycles because it sounded like you started 2 years before I did.
Really? I didn't know that.
Did you say 1980? Yeah,
and I got hired by a company that bought houses with absolutely no experience. I just had a big mouth and got my way in.
Well, I'm 82. In fact, as I recall, the prime rate was over 16% when I first looked.
Yeah. Well, in 1980, when I started for the company, I didn't like how they did business. I was the number 1 buyer very quickly, but I really hated how they treated people. So I refinanced my free and clear house at 17.5. How's that for bad timing?
And I remember sitting in a restaurant back then, talking to a friend, and I made the comment, I wonder if we're ever going to get down to 10% again.
Yeah, absolutely.
It wasn't funny. It wasn't funny.
No, we definitely thought that was possible. But, what's fun, Ron? When you do reports and you put them in writing, you're stuck with that title.
Yeah.
Think of some of those titles. Price is going to go down by half. Price is going to double, and 2% mortgage rates. The 2% mortgage rate was probably the one that I had the most grief over, because rates went back up, and then when they went down below 3, I got all these emails. Oh my God, that was fun.
Yeah. Well, again, real estate market going forward. What do you see? We got inflation. That's against it. We got high interest rates. That's against it. But is it enough to drive the market back down? Not to 2009, but in other words, all of this that we gained, frankly, if the prices drop, they're not dropping anywhere near what they gained. So we're just getting some of that artificial inflation back. But everybody's wondering, well, what's going to happen to the market? I'm always telling them, I hope it's terrible. I hope a recession hits big time. It's the best thing that happened to real estate investors, as long as we're buying.
Yeah. I guess I really think that the history tells me you have to have a group of have to sell inventory that's a big enough quantity to be the controller of the retail price. I don't see that.
No,
I don't see how that shows up. So I think we've used up all our gain for a decade everywhere. Okay. So. Yeah. But okay. So what? I mean, that's not the worst thing in the world if you're, but you know what? People don't land there. I was at a meeting just recently, and the people were talking about, well, there's a trajectory now that's going forward will be like more normal. And I'm thinking, no, you used up 10 years of trajectory. You're not going to have normal.
What is normal anyway? I don't know how to define it.
Yeah, there's always cycles, but I think you landed on a place that very few people do. The human participant is really responsible for the exaggerations of it. So why should you have 10 offers in 10 minutes in 2021? Because everyone's urgent to get one. And why can you buy a house for 20 cents on the dollar in 2009 and not have any competition? It's because they're fearful. So if the best thing an investor can do is unplug from emotion and look stoically at charts and go, okay, everybody's excited. You can have my stuff now, and everybody's fearful. I'm gonna buy it now.
Well, I can tell you this. I hope the market really turns bad and sucks and everybody's afraid, because when that happens, I'm gonna go buy all the houses I can possibly buy as fast as I can buy them. But I'm not going to put them on the market to cash out for people getting a loan. The prices will be down anyway. So I'll just stick tenant buyers in there. Bruce, I got tenant buyers that have been in my houses for 10, 12 years. And man, they do the repairs and I've never done anything. We collect the rent. We got big deposits putting them in there. I want all of them I can get, and I don't want to cash out of them. I don't care what the market does. But
I agree with that. I haven't sold anything this cycle, to be honest with you. I'm done selling stuff. But what you said, so rather than say what you want to happen, what do you think will happen?
I think you're going to have a decline in prices, and even that is area specific, because some areas are not seeing a decline at all. I know you had a big decline out in LA and in Phoenix and 3 or 4 places. I heard prices have already dropped about 40% out there. And I would imagine those are the ones that have gone up 100%, and 40% of it is getting taken back. But here in Jacksonville, Florida, where I live, prices are sliding a little bit, but it's not a big monstrous issue. And so you already said it. I think the lack of supply is the only thing that's keeping it up right now.
Absolutely.
As long as that's out there, then I don't think the housing market is going to drop much. But the days of putting on the market and get 10 offers in an hour are over.
Absolutely.
But the public, the sellers, is going to take more time for them to sink that in, because they're not in this industry like we are, and they're not keeping an eye on it. So, some of them think we're still back there.
One of the nice things about being in the industry, so, when we have stuff for sale constantly, we're taking the temperature of the market for real.
Yeah.
Which is, really helpful. So we just accept an offer for $690 on a property that we could have sold for $715 when we at the peak of the market. So that's a 25 grand hit. Percentage wise, that's less than 4%. When we started construction, that 715 home, we thought we were going to get 554.
I see that a lot.
Yeah. So a lot of that upside stuck. So we can't be too sorry. It's only sold for $690. And that's in escrow right now. So that's what's interesting when you're doing this stuff. You have a barometer that's in real time.
Mm-hmm. But and also, because we're in the industry, we don't think like everybody looking at charts. Okay, see, I know the human factor, and therefore, what that chart says may not be applicable to the target that I'm looking for to buy houses. In fact, it is not applicable.
Well, that's why we made that thing called a moodometer, because that's the only thing it charts is the human participant and what they're likely to do.
Yeah, and the decisions they make that even as long as I've been at it, I have a hard time figuring out why some people decide to do what they do, but I'm not going to be able to change that. And I quit worrying about that about 40 years ago. I quit asking why. What, when, how, and how fast. I forget why. I don't even ask why. Why are you selling? I don't care. They're making it up anyway. It's irrelevant to me.
I'll tell you a story because I know you'll relate to it. A guy had responding to my ad. He said, I got a 140 grand house, 075 on it. I just want to deed it to somebody today. So first thing I thought, it's probably worth 90 and it's probably a mess. So I go there. Nope, it's worth 140 and it's in decent shape. So I sit there and I'm trying to talk this guy out of it. To be honest with you, I'm going, why don't you just list the house? I was like giving him ideas. He finally said to me, you just ran an ad that said you buy houses and you're doing everything but. I said, are you telling me you're going to sell this house today for nothing down to take over your loan?
Yeah.
He said, yes. I said, okay, I'm going to do that. And I finally I said, okay, you got to explain to me why you're doing it, because I don't get it. And he said, I have never had debt in my life in my name. I have an apartment building that pays all my bills plus some, and I just don't want to owe any money anymore. You'd rather pay rent. That's more than your payment. Absolutely. I said, okay.
God bless him.
Well, but I understand what you just said. You probably just thought, I've tried that once too many times, and people are going to do what they do. So anyway, that was one of the head shakers for me, but that was, oh my gosh. Yeah. A long time ago.
I've just learned to shut up. And I teach, we ask questions, we answer questions with questions. Shut up and let the seller tell us what they're going to take, not make them offers, which we do. We're always asking them, what's the least you could take, and we usually buy with nothing down, okay. But would you believe about half of them say okay?
Yes.
Why? I think I should probably start asking them why, shouldn't I? No.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I want to mention one other thing, Ron, that has changed. When you and I started living in a house, back in, let's say, the 70s or 80s, the ownership time frame was 4 to 5 years. It is now, without the benefit of the interest rate at 2 or 3, it had already grown to 13. So this new crop of people that just bought their home and refinanced it to 2.5, there's a good chance they're not going anywhere for a very long time.
Unless they get sick or divorced or run out of income or on a list this long.
Right. But doesn't that mortgage rate give them options they've never had before? A positive cash flow rental?
Yeah, but come on. How many of them want to turn into landlords? Very few. I'm afraid if they do, they'll screw it up. In fact, we buy properties from landlords who have no training.
Okay.
That's not the same way. Anyway, all I'm saying is there's always a bunch of people out there that are going to sell their house no matter what's going on around them. And I tell everybody, just take care of your house and quit worrying about what's going on in the White House, because there ain't a darn thing you can do about that but vote. So you and I both been through all these, the high rates, the RTC, 2008, all these cycles, and not one of those years did I go without ever buying a house. Okay. I buy them regardless. We just change with the times.
Here's a funny story that you will appreciate, because with no experience, this is my first 6 weeks in the business. I had bought a lot of houses in cheap areas, and then I bought 5 new ones. And the guy that owned the company was just shocked I bought something nice for 60 cents on the dollar. He said, I'm going to take you into Newport Beach and see if you can buy something that's looking at the ocean. And sure enough, a few days later, a doctor has this waterfront property, and it's worth about $1 million. We make an offer of $650. He has his lawyer there. For whatever reason, of course, they were not happy, but they kind of said, okay, we're going to take the offer, but it can't be a 45-day escrow. It has to be a 10-day escrow. I said, I don't have the right to make that decision. Let me call the owner. So I called the owner, and I told him what the deal was. Good news, I got the $650 accepted. Just need a 10-day escrow. So he said, waterfront? Yeah. He says, do they have a boat dock? I said, yeah. He said, they have a boat? I said, yeah. He said, okay, I'll do the 10 days if we can have their boat. So I hang up the phone. Now I'm 28 years old. I've been in the business for 6 weeks, and I'm with the doctor and his lawyer. And I say, I've got some good news for you. I got your $650. I got your 10-day escrow. I just need your boat. And boy, did it hit the fan for about 10 minutes. And honestly, I left the house with a signed contract and their boat. As I went home, I just thought, how long has this been going on?
Yeah.
That people have been doing this.
As long as I've been in the business.
Yeah. But that was the aha moment for me. I just didn't realize. And honestly, for a month, I was a terror negotiating everything just for fun. We'd go in to get a couch, and I'd said, okay, I'll buy the couch, but I got to have the 2 lamps. I was just playing with it, and it worked. And I was just like, oh my God.
We did the same thing. I can't tell you all the crap I got from other houses that are in my house now. I quit. I don't even want to look at it anymore. But I remember way back in the 80s, and we were buying a lot of foreclosures from people before they went to foreclosure. And inevitably, I'd go into people's houses and they say, I think the Lord will provide. I'm not ready to sell. And I heard that about 25, 30 times. And I started saying, well, how do you know he didn't send me? and how many times do you think he's going to send someone? I'm here right now. And take a look at the people going into foreclosure. And I know I'm going to piss some people off here with this one, but very rarely they go out and do something to make that house payment. I mean, have a car wash, sell some crap. That's humans that we're dealing with. Yeah. They don't, they're just not very well equipped sometimes to solve their problems. If they actually took a deep, hard look, they ain't that big of a problem at all. But that's the society we live in. And I'm afraid it's getting worse, frankly, with what's coming out of these schools nowadays.
One more story for you, because what you just said. I got a call. The lady didn't say hi. She said, "When were you born and what time?" I said, "Okay." So there was a shuffling of papers. She said, "Oh, good, I can work with you." So I went to go see this house and sat in front of her, made an offer, and she said, "Oh, wow, I got to think about it." I said, "Well, let me ask you a question. Why did I get invited over here?" She says, "Oh, well, I believe in horoscope." I said, "Oh, okay." And you did some looking, and I was the person you were supposed to sell the house to. She said, "That's right." And I said, "You're not going to sell it to me?" And you'd have thought I dropped the bomb in the living room, man. I just slid the paperwork over. She signed it, and I just thought, unbelievable.
Hey, up, what comes out of your mouth will dictate what goes into your bank account.
I like that.
Well, listen, we're already over. So
all right,
got a clear answer on where you think we're going with this market that we're in right now. Do you think we're just going to have a slight downturn or a big downturn?
I don't think we're going to have a big down. I don't think we're going to have a big downturn. I think our downturn will be dictated by the amount of inventory that has to sell. That's got to come from REOs, which I don't see. It's got to come from unemployed, which I don't see. And it has to be historically a very big percentage of what's for sale, which I don't see. But you're stuck with an unrealistic amount that the next buyer has to pay for the house. So you're going to rely on, Florida has 1031 exchange people coming in from New York. That's a big help. So they can write a check for it. Even if they had a mortgage on the other one, they won't have one here. Cash buyers. So Florida's more insulated. There's a chart, Ron. I don't know if you've ever seen this. The migration of money to Florida. I'll send it to you. The migration of money to Florida's number one. Then there's another 9 for the top 10. Florida's migration of net worth is more than the other 9 states.
So why did you move here?
Well, I moved here because I was able to buy a tract of lots after the down cycle was over in California. You guys had a 4-year foreclosure process. And I was interviewing Doug Duncan, the chief economist of Fannie Mae, and I studied the financials for Fannie Mae in 2015. And it said 25% of Fannie Mae's losses come from one state, Florida. And I thought, well, how could that be in 2015? And I read that you had a 4-year foreclosure process, and I realized, oh my God, they're still in 2011.
What do you mean 4-year foreclosure process?
In 2009, that's how long it took. Fannie Mae had it calculated how many days it took to foreclose.
It took them 4 years to foreclose because they had such a big stack.
That's right. But that was why they had damage in price.
Yeah.
They had a lot of REOs. Well, so anyway,
as I recall, the foreclosing attorneys were so busy, it took a lot longer than normal. But not 4 years.
Well, that was their average time for a foreclosure.
Well, that's their own fault.
Right. Okay. But what that told me was that there was a builder that had a tract of lots he couldn't build on. It would not pencil. So the next day, I have a good friend. I said, let's chase some lots down. I'm going to build my rentals there. And that's what I did.
One day you and I are going to swap stories about 2008, but not today. And
all right.
I promise you, Bruce, my story is going to make you feel real good about your story.
All right. Hey, Ron, it's been great talking with you, man.
But all right. Anyway, maybe we'll do this again in the not too distant future.
Anytime.
That's all for this edition of the Mentor Podcast. To connect with Ron and learn how you can attain financial freedom, as well as up-to-date strategies to grow and protect your wealth based on today's discussion, go to www.connectwiththementor.com.